better get going if we have this much stuff to talk about.
Okay.
I sensed
Well,
I sensed that this might be a long episode, even though it's just a bonus episode. But
this worked out far better than I ever anticipated.
okay. Hi everyone. Welcome back to the Hack Fraud Show. This is another Hack Fraud Extra. Because due to unforeseen circumstances,
or underestimated circumstances, rather.
yes, that's
Yeah.
true. None of us watched the movies we were supposed to watch for this week.
I mean, we are hack frauds. It's in the title.
It isn't this. I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often.
You should know what you're getting into with us. Anyway, we're still going to do this episode. I'm very excited about watching these movies. We will get to them next week. Memories of Murder and Spring, Summer, Fall, Winter, and Spring. Anyway, that episode is coming, but we kind of figured, hey, we may as well just do a little bonus episode that's all just about stuff we've been watching lately. So
Yeah, because we've been watching a lot of shit.
we have. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm not even really quite sure where to start.
Let's ask the days-old question. What have we been watching?
What have we been watching?
What have we been watching? I want to start with Spider-Man.
Okay.
Let's start with Spider-Man. Okay, so I think it was the night we recorded the last episode. Reed and I barreled down to the Gateway because Reed just really wanted to go see a movie at the Gateway, even though it's playing everywhere.
Because, fuck the Marcus.
Fuck the Marcus. Yeah, I hate the Marcus.
Oh.
But we went to go see it, and we were kind of late, so we missed quite a bit of the awful, awful vlog opening. Of that, just awful,
But you also missed the opening scene of Michael Keaton cleaning up after the battle in the first Avengers movie.
Oh boy, do I just really want to see that.
Yeah.
Where do I start with this? I think, my, initial sort of, quasi-hot take out of it is that, this movie has just made me really worried about the state of the American superhero, and by proxy, the state of American culture going forward. Because, the superhero as American mythology is hardly a new thing. This is kind of just, an accepted thing at this point. Grant Morrison wrote an entire book on it called Super Gods. And that it just is a widely accepted thing. And it's also widely accepted that, pop culture often says a lot about the culture that produced it. Hence, it being called pop culture.
Yes.
And culture shit.
I'm getting there. And what we have is a culture where Superman destroys cities carelessly and kind of is bummed out about saving people. Batman is feared by the entirety of Gotham City. Not just criminals, all of it. And Spider-Man steals a car and is just doing the superhero thing to impress Daddy Stark and to achieve the societal rank of Avenger. And I find that deeply, deeply disturbing. What do you think?
I think you're reading way too much into it. I mean, okay, not so much with the DC things, because all the people working on those movies would prefer you to read too much into it.
Oh yeah.
So that's all fine, and that stuff is toxic. I definitely agree.
Yeah.
That new Justice League trailer that came out in Comic-Con, I haven't watched it yet. I've been avoiding it. I will say this though: saw the Ready Player One trailer. No. Looks horrible. What are you doing, Steven Spielberg? I'm sorry, but
oh no,
I got off topic there. But
I now need to watch that.
God, it just looks awful. But anyway, I don't know. I think Spider-Man has been kind of gentrified up a little bit with this movie,
Yeah.
And
I kind of hate that.
Yeah, I can understand why. I don't know. I just think you're reading a little too much into the whole wants to impress Daddy Stark thing. I mean, yes, that's a thing. I mean, I don't know. I kind of read it more as this version of Spider-Man is a high schooler, is a teenager, he's irresponsible, he's not quite sure what kind of superhero he is yet. I don't think he's just doing it to be a member of the Avengers. He still is doing good work. He just feels like he wants to do like bigger and better things. It's a classic like, you know, cocky teenager kind of move. So I kind of bought all that stuff. I didn't really have a problem with it.
I mean, like, I can accept that to a certain point, but, like, Spider-Man is, like, one of, like, the big three. There's a big three of superheroes. Spider-Man, Batman, Superman.
Yeah.
And maybe Wonder Woman if you want to throw her in. Like, that is our, like, these are, like, our paragons of, like, morality in pop culture, oddly enough. So is, like, the entire superhero genre, oddly enough. And, like, to me, like, every action Spider-Man takes is inherently political, just by the nature of that character, by the nature of that brand. And, like, I'm sorry, like, I don't want to hold, like, our paragons of morality to a shitty high schooler. I mean, he happens to be that. But like, part of, like, the Peter Parker character is transcending that, is growing up, is maturing. And there's very little maturity in this movie.
I mean, I think the counter that he has some maturity, question mark, especially at the end when he refuses the updated suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, here's my thing. I didn't really like look up to any like superheroes were like not a big thing in my childhood. Like I know you have a lot of affection for Superman, like other people do. I enjoy Batman like quite a bit, and like he was definitely the superhero I like liked most as a child.
Yeah.
But he wasn't like a looming like, you know, pop cultural figure in my life. Superheroes are just something I've never like really had a going concern with. Like I look at them now and I do really like the X-Men movies, and like those have kind of become like very near and dear to my heart, but that's only because of like that's beautiful.
These are DVDs of the Fleischner cartoons that I watched as a kid. One of them is Superman versus the monsters and villains, and then these are like the Fleischer Studio ones. Then when they switched to the Famous Studios, now it's Superman versus nature and war.
Superman's two greatest enemies, nature and war.
War, which is fabulous. So like I that's just to explain. Like I do hold like a whole lot of reverence. I think the superhero just means a lot in our collective pop culture.
That's maybe
That's
true.
Just something I hold.
That's maybe true. It just doesn't mean that much to me, so I don't really have a problem with them, like, playing fast and loose with Spider-Man. I mean, Man of Steel is a terrible movie, but, like, I am not nearly as offended by the idea of Superman killing someone as you are.
Yeah, okay, and I'll give you that. But beyond that, like, Spider-Man Homecoming is, like, one part mediocre teeny bop movie, one part mediocre, like, Michael Keaton pilot, and another part shitty Avengers movie. And like all the action is just uncreative. Like I mean, like this movie is peppered with a lot of ideas that like if they went with any of them, I think I'd really like it. Like there's the idea in the beginning of the movie as like Queens as this tight knit community. Spider-Man's superheroics affect his like daily life as Peter Parker. Like the great scene when he has to save the cat from the place he gets sandwiches from all the time.
Yeah.
Great scene, wonderful idea. There's also like the little montage of him running around and getting yelled at by people, and there's like that idea of like Queens as this tight-knit community, and that's great. They do nothing with it. That's like the end of it right there. The idea of Tony Stark as like not really a replacement father figure, but sort of like as a new father figure in like Peter Parker's life, because that's like a big thing for Peter Parker, obviously.
Sure.
That's interesting. Again, they do nothing with it. Robert Downey Jr. just looks bored or on his green screen. Like I think like half the movie is either him in vacation spots or on a green screen. And I think that just tells a lot about, like, what that character means for the greater story.
Yeah, it looks like he actually showed up on set for, like, two scenes, one of which is him in the car.
Looks like he's actually there, I'll give you that.
Yes. I mean, he's obviously there for a couple scenes, but then others, it's just like, he's, like, video calling in, or, like, he's obviously in front of a green screen.
Somewhere, or, like...
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean... almost all of these Marvel movies, especially like any event involving the Avengers, are just really kind of a mishmash. And
Yeah.
this one to me was just a more entertaining mishmash than
Oh,
have been in the
also,
past. So
yeah, like I mean, this is like infinitely better than like Civil War.
yeah,
Or like even, or I'd argue like this is a bit better put together than like Avengers 2.
oh yeah, I would agree.
Avengers 2, or especially Ant-Man, like fuck me. Like especially like the Avengers stuff, like at least you have the idea of Tony Stark as father figure. At least that's there.
Right.
And also
Falcon isn't just there to remind you that there's another Captain America movie coming out next year.
yeah, and also like Michael Keaton. I love Michael Keaton.
We all love Michael Keaton.
And I will say, like, the scene where Michael Keaton is revealed to be the love interest father, delightful.
It's gold. That's
fucking delightful.
That's the best part of the damn movie.
But Michael Keaton as bored supervillain, I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Well, most of those like earlier scenes with him are pretty boring. I just like the idea of him like as like a regular guy who was like affected by the Avengers. Like
interesting idea. And there was the idea in this movie as like the Avengers as this like bored, monolithic, like extra governmental society. Like they go to Avengers HQ, they go to this huge storage facility, and no one's there. Like they are just like this impenetrable, awkward, bureaucratic organization. But they're always like, "Isn't this cool?" And it's not.
And also, don't forget the ever so famous scene of high schoolers playing "Fuck, Marry, Kill."
Fuck, Marry, Kill the Avengers, and like
I do love that.
Poor gym teacher like showing people Captain America videos,
Yeah.
and I don't know. Like I think the school is a really big missed opportunity because I kind of like the idea of Peter Parker at Genius School.
Yeah.
But they do so little with it that it just turns into, hey, we can have like this super gentrified school that's like really nice, pristine, and looks nothing. That's actually in Queens.
Also, I think I forgot to say this about the movie when I talked about it last week. This movie made me like retroactively question like how much I actually like Tony Revolori, and that's a crime. That's a crime because he's delightful in the Grand Budapest Hotel, but he's just such a fuckball in this movie.
Oh yeah, that's just like Mr. Also, I don't think the Washington D.C. bit's all that great.
I like it. I like that scene where he has to like save everyone on the Washington Monument.
Right after that, and then like it like has like a. Like it gets better, but like from the ending of that to the beginning of the movie, I was cringing and wanting to get out of the theater because, God, the writing is just so bad.
This movie had like fucking 5 writers, so it makes perfect sense that like there's all these setup and payoffs, and there's all these setups, but none of them pay off.
Yeah,
and like all like the cool there's all these cool ideas, but they do nothing with, and that makes perfect sense. So I think it's just another typical like Marvel crapshoot. There are things I like in it, things I hate. I think it's better than like the recent like Avengers adjacent shit they've done.
Listen, I was just very pleasantly surprised because the last couple of movies that have had like a couple that like more than one Avenger in them have been really just not good. For me, like, moderately enjoying one was, like, a big victory for me.
Yeah, but, like, this did make me go back and, like, I didn't have I actually turned out I didn't have time to do this, but I watched, like, 40 minutes of Spider-Man 2. That movie's kind of delightful.
Yeah.
It has, like, a defined idea for why it exists. It goes, okay, we have Peter Parker, he's now Spider-Man. Let's look at, like, an actual teenager, like, going to college, like, dealing with being Spider-Man. And his grades are slipping, he can't keep a job, like, he can't pay the rent, like, he can't be in people's lives. And there also is, like, the fascinating, like, idea of, like, Spider-Man is always interacting with the people around him. Like, there's the great little scene where like in Peter Parker is just like driving in the road, and then like there's this bank heist going on, so he has to do like this CGI super flip over it. But then he lands in front of two kids. They're like, "Whoa! How'd you do that?" And it's like, "Whoa, you got to eat your vegetables." That's what my mom says when I didn't believe her. Like, this movie is just full of like wonderful things, and there's like the woman with the little violin saying "Spider-Man, Spider-Man."
Yeah.
And it is like just like it is such like a one. And there's also like the scene where like Spider-Man is losing his powers, so he has to get into an elevator, and they're like, and the guys in there saying, "Nice spider suit." Rides a bit in the crotch. So, like, yeah, Spider-Man 2 is something, like, there are some things that don't work in it, obviously. I think, like, the Raimi films are kind of hit or miss a lot of the times. Mm-hmm. But it's made by a real fucking filmmaker with a real goddamn vision and some actual goddamn heart. This isn't just like, hey, we gotta make another one of these spider pictures because they made a lot of money. So yeah, like I just think like the Raimi films just need to be held on a pedestal above all this nonsense.
I don't disagree with you. We should probably look into seeing The Evil Dead at some point.
Oh yeah, I think we are lacking Sam Raimi in our filmography, in our like cinema watching history.
It's interesting because he like actually like came up like with the Coen brothers and was like a close collaborator with them when like earlier in their career. So I'd be interested in looking.
Wasn't there one he made with them?
He co-wrote Hudsucker Proxy with them.
Yeah, which is one of the best Coen Brothers movies. So
I agree with you. A lot of people do not agree with you.
Well, fuck those people. So, well, I've been talking for a while.
Yes.
Tyler, what have you been watching?
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. I have been watching. Do you want to talk about War for the Planet of the Apes?
I do want to talk about that.
Okay.
What do you think?
I liked it fine. Although I saw it like a week ago, and I have now realized I don't remember much about that movie.
Okay.
Look, it was good. There's a lot of like really good stuff in it, and I really enjoyed it while I was watching it. I just kind of walked out and I was like, that was pretty good, and then like that was kind of it.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same. I don't think it's quite forgettable, but like I am kind of on the. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like there's like a portion of this movie, and I can't say how long it is because I'm not a nerd and I keep track of like what timestamp I'm at in the movie. That turns into like Planet of the Apes post-apocalypta, where it just turns into like this little roaming crew of like Caesar and co. Like running through like the destroyed humanity, and like they run across like an escaped zoo ape who was like hoarding all these like who's hoarding all like the last refuges of humanity and is in like this giant fuck off ski hotel, and that's fascinating.
Yeah, there's a lot of really like interesting and compelling imagery in this movie. Like this. Some of it is ripped straight from Apocalypse Now, but
they literally say Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, but I admire like how committed they've been to making all three of these new Apes movies like very different from each other. Like
like they just like really just it's a war movie.
Yeah, like Rise is like a good solid like kind of sci-fi-y like kind of like blockbuster. Dawn,
like a sci-fi, like morality tale.
Yeah. Dawn is a really strange movie, and I haven't watched it since it came out.
I haven't seen Dawn.
Oh, interesting. Dawn is good. I remember liking it a lot. I haven't rewatched it, and I've been meaning to. I meant to rewatch it before I saw the new one, but I didn't get around to it. Dawn is interesting. It's like kind of a survival thing, and like it's just. You see them like kind of trying to make peace with the humans. It's very interesting. It's like almost kind of like a tale of like political intrigue a little bit because like
like the politics are like everywhere in these movies. Especially in war, they're everywhere.
Yeah, and then war like you get like Caesar and like this band of like fellow apes like going on a mission of vengeance, and then like
turns into Heart of Darkness.
Yeah, and then. Like it takes a turn and becomes like a very dark like Great Escape kind of movie, and then
Great Escape with like a shitload of Holocaust imagery.
Yeah,
and like they crucify Caesar.
Yeah.
This movie's not subtle, Reed. We'll just say that.
It's not subtle, but it's got, at least its unsubtle ideas are more interesting than most blockbuster territory.
Oh yeah, like I just kind of think about like, wow, like, and also like there's one of the ideas that came up in this movie is like I thought it was like a sort of uncanny valley idea, but that's not really the case because the apes are humanized to a point where it's not where like they're like we read them as people internally, but they're still like animalistic and like a lot of expression in them. So I think it's just more like an issue of anthropomorphization, where like we have anthropomorphized characters right up against like live action humans, and that's kind of weird.
It is weird.
On a subconscious level.
I think it works pretty well though. Like, they do a very good job. I mean, in this movie, it's very clear that you're supposed to be empathizing with the apes, so that's that's not really a problem. I also love the way like Matt Reeves like seems to be so interested in like shooting faces. Like there's so many like super tight close-ups like on the apes and on the people, and it's
just like Caesar's sad, wrinkled face. I mean, the movie's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like some of the imagery in this movie is absolutely gorgeous, and also like, God, the CGI is incredible. It's
incredible. It is great, and yeah, Andy Serkis deserves like all the awards for his commitment to all of this.
Like he is like half of that character, and like half of why that character is as compelling as he is, and like it is like a really interesting blockbuster, but it's also like it's as subtle as someone hitting you over the head with a hammer. And like I think like some of its ideas could use a bit more development.
Yeah. And it's not like a great movie, but it is a great a great summer movie, I think. If you're grading on the curve of summer blockbusters, this is like a very good one.
It's a wonderful special effects showcase with some nice ideas on the side.
And I love the little girl. This has been a banner year for like great little girls in blockbuster films.
Yeah. I will say this, like, this movie has the habit of just, like, throwing all logic out the window just to have, like, touching moments. Like, the girl just walks into the middle of this quasi-concentration camp, spotlight blaring, and just no one sees her. No one has peripheral vision in this movie.
That's fine, though, because the moments that they like shortcut to get to are great moments.
Great scenes, like the little moments in this movie are wonderful. Like I love like God, what's the name of the orangutan and like his relationship with the little girl is just wondrous.
Yeah, that's all good stuff.
Got a lot of stupid shit. got some moments of brilliance. I think it's worth seeing.
I would say it's worth seeing. I don't know if it's one I'm going to be like rewatching a lot, but it's definitely good. Reed, do you want to try and get some words in before we move on to the big one here?
Okay, yes, okay. So...
Do you want to tell us about live action Beauty and the Beast?
Winky and the Wink. Okay, let's go.
Are you I think you're the only one among us who has seen this shit. Or has Warner seen it?
Matthew has seen this.
Oh yeah, Matthew saw it.
Matthew has seen this, and he warned me about this movie by saying that the singing sounds more like they're just like talking with words like Beauty and the Beast, and like
Mr. Auto-Tune comes in.
I want to say he's wrong, but he's not entirely wrong because I think he forgot to mention. There's fucking auto-tune. They auto-tune Emma Watson.
Hey, I'll say this. For all the issues with La La Land, at least that movie committed to just having them just sing naturally, even if it wasn't that great.
I believe they're singing. I believe somehow, Emma Stone is singing in a recording booth. With this shit.
No, it's like, fuck, this is terrible. And my mom somehow had the guts to say this is better than the animated. And I'm about ready to say bullshit, but I hold back and say, no.
No. Because... I'm sorry, man. Like,
let me just go through a couple of stuff. Okay.
Can I just say this real quick? Disney, hire singers. I mean, don't give the fucking fucking Rock a scene and like giving these like musicals to people who can't fucking sing.
Hey, I like The Rock, okay?
I like The Rock.
Yeah.
He can't sing.
That's okay. Ryan Gosling can't either. It's okay. At least he's actually singing.
Yeah.
At least it's not on a tune. Okay, so with 2017 live-action Beauty and the Beast, they add a lot of shit to this on top of the original. So they use the original, so they use the animated as this template, and then they add a bunch of new songs in. And actually, to be honest, the new songs are better than any of what was copied over. Let me be honest. Because the best song is actually when Belle leaves the castle.
Wait.
And then,
Let me just clarify. Are you saying the new songs are better than the original songs, or they're better than this movie's interpretation of the original songs?
better than this movie's interpretation.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay, good. I just wanted to make sure.
Original classics.
Right, yeah. So they start out with like a new song that they made, and like you have people wearing like you have princes wearing face makeup, sort of like Eastern. It's
Is there kind of like
I
a
don't
mask
fucking
of the
know.
Red Death here with like
Kind
all these like
of.
people like
Yeah.
holding up?
Yeah, and then they like tell the story of Enchantress coming in, offering Rose for shelter. The princess fuck off, and then he turns into a beast. Soon after, he realizes, "Oh shit, what have I done?" And then everyone turns into inanimate objects, similar to the beginning, except not in mural form. I kind of like mural form. And then we get to the timeless classic of the little town number. And after going through the little town number, about halfway, I'm thinking, God, this is so low in energy. This is so low. Why is this so low in energy? And why is Emma Watson on auto?
I am gonna say, like, from like what I've seen of this movie, it is shocking just how much, like, I just swear to God they just used the same storyboards from the like animated version and just let's make it in live action. There were just some like actual like just same shots, like same staging,
Yeah,
placement, everything, but just live action, and it's shocking.
Yeah. Also, probably one of the biggest problems I saw, like among from some of the obvious ones, is that they gave Maurice a less of a crazy lens. So like he didn't seem insane like he did in an animated when he was a crazy inventor and he was, like in this he was like he's like a fine-tuned craftsman, and then they still throw him in an insane asylum and I'm like, hold the fuck up. You have no agency to do this. Why isn't someone in the crowd protesting against Gaston? Calling Gaston out on his bullshit.
Yo, Gaston!
Fuck this.
Little though I want to defend this movie that I haven't seen. I mean, I think the whole point of like throwing him in the asylum was like A, like a sham to begin with, and B, because he was like ranting about the Beast, right? Like it wasn't that like
That's why, but but there's also the thing in the first movie where it's like, I think the thing in the animated movie is like, we're sick of your shit. We're throwing you in this Beast nonsense is the last straw.
Yeah.
Except in this movie, it's more like, oh, you tapped back to Gaston, and even the townspeople are like calling Gaston out on this bullshit, and then Gaston somehow convinces the town people, hey, we need to lock this fucker up.
Reed, I have to ask, how was the gay moment? Non-existent?
Basically non-existent is what I understand.
So right before this movie came out, all of us got wind through media that LeFou was interpreted as someone who is gay.
Yeah, we're gonna get some surprise butt sex.
We don't. I'm kind of disappointed by that, but
I think everyone was.
but I'll tell you why. So we go through, and then so we see that LeFou admires Gaston, which is very close to the original, and then towards the end, everyone's at the ball, the castle, spell broken, and then he is like, whoa, when another, I'm gonna say Three Musketeers just shows up, and then they do the weird hand twirl dance, and he's like, oh, and then the movie ends. And this is sort of a symptom of just bad economics of storytelling. And
I do love the idea of like
this violates one of Kurt Vonnegut's rules of storytelling, where if you have a gun, you have to make it go off. It never went off.
Well, I mean,
don't put Kurt fucking Vonnegut into the live action Beauty and the Beast.
we are overinterpreting this all to hell right now, but
it probably doesn't deserve the analyst. You're right.
You know, here's like I even object to like the idea of calling the animated version the original. Like I think we should just call this one The Abomination and just move on, because it has no reason to exist other than, well, they liked it last time. Maybe if we put it in live action, they'll like it more.
Yeah, also the objects look creepy as fuck.
Well, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think the theory is, this is how, like, some people have explained it to me.
And I think you've said how, like, the Jungle Book live action, like was very off-putting, didn't you?
Yeah, after the Jungle Book, I was like, yeah, I'm out. I did see the live action Pete's Dragon, which was, like, fine. But, whatever. Anyway, how this has been explained to me is that, like, I guess, like, the excuse they're using is that, like, kids, like, want to experience these movies. Like, you know, kids who, you know, weren't alive when these movies came out the first time, like, should be able to experience them. I'm like, well, okay, they still have those movies, A. B, can't you keep telling, like, more, like, you know, new stories that we haven't seen done your way before?
That's been going on in cinema since its inception. That's not something broken with it. You gotta go back and watch this shit. You can't get everything remade and put in the theaters for you.
I was gonna say, you know, Beauty and the Beast came out, like, before our time, and we still watch it and enjoy it. We don't need to make a live action. And, like, when I get wind of, like, all these new live action movies, I'm incredibly worried.
It's depressing.
I'm incredibly worried.
Hey man, I'm really excited for that new live action Lion King. I think it's going to be a rollicking good time, don't you know?
Live action. That makes me so upset. I am so upset about the live action Lion King. This is beyond the pale. God. John Favreau is getting paid to direct a $200 million computer animated movie that's just kind of photorealistic. God! I'm so upset about this.
If I had any more passion for Disney, I would be just as angry. I just kind of see it as like, wow, this is what, like, some joke dystopian world does.
Well, guess what? We live in that world.
We do live in that world, because Spider-Man steals a car.
You're right. And Superman
fucking kills people. Speaking of Superman, because I went on, like, a superhero binge after, like, my crisis coming out of Spider-Man Homecoming, I decided to rewatch Superman Returns again, because I just need a palate cleanser for all this goddamn bullshit. And in it, I realized that, like, that movie gets, like, Superman's connection to people way more than any other that's ever been. Like, there's, like, the great moment where, like, he stops, like, a speeding car, and it becomes a media circus, because, like, all the people, like, circle around him, and there's a kid, like, taking pictures of his camera phone. There's, like, an entire sequence where, like, all the world media is focused on Superman doing heroics. Like, there's, like, the crowd at the baseball game when he, like, saves the plane out of the sky that's there to cheer. And I realize, like, wow, this movie gets it. that these people aren't here to punch. These superheroes aren't just here to punch the villain of the week and move on to another serialized adventure. Like, there's a real connection between the hero and their people. That should be the foundation of all of these things, but yet it's not.
Yeah, well, I mean, that should be the foundation of like Superman stories anyway.
Yeah, Superman story. But also, like, I think I finally sort of, like, pinpointed the issues with that movie. I mean, like, all the things we said last time, like, Lex Luthor, like, as fun as I think Kevin Spacey is, Lex Luthor just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And, like, the climax is just way too fucking long. But, like, it's also, like, the kind of movie that should be dictated by characters and should be like the way it's edited together should be like linking character moments. But it's got like this weird faux Star Wars back to the ranch style where it just keeps cutting between things almost on a sort of like time schedule.
Yeah.
And that just makes for like a really awkward viewing experience because you just have something that's put together like really mechanically, but like the moments themselves are like these like emotional little perfect scenes. So
no, that movie's fine. I certainly like understand what you see in it. I just do not appreciate it quite as much. Also, my biggest issue with that movie, perhaps the biggest logical hole in a film that has several of them. Pulitzer Prize winning reporter Lois Lane still can't spell anything.
Oh yeah, like this movie has a ton of problems, but I think like I guess it's a movie that like some of the parts are just so incredible. Like, God, this movie's gorgeous, and like the image of Superman above the world, just sort of listening to everything, is one of the greatest superhero things I think that's ever been created.
Yeah, I will say something actually, just to kind of just. I think this should be the last like superhero thing like for this hour, but I do think it would be interesting to like have a very like realistic like take on superheroes where like you actually look at like how like the public and how like the police and how like the government like interacts with like, you know, people kind of taking the law into their own hands and like trying to help. Like, but, you know, just kind of maybe getting in the way. Like, I think like a super realistic treatment of that would be very interesting. The problem is, most of the movies we're getting now, like, kind of half-ass that approach.
Yeah.
So,
like Civil War is about, like, as, like, the framework of that, but it's actually just about a bunch of children getting into a punch fight over, like, previous grudges. Whereas, like, Superman Returns is about adults, like, figuring out, like, hey, I left for 5 years. It's time to move on with my life, and appreciate people. And like Superman Returns also has like the fascinating scene of like Superman in a hospital.
Yeah, that's
and like the police rush him by, and there's the media circus around that. Like, I just think think this is a fascinating movie that gets a lot of things that like the modern superhero movie just doesn't have the leeway to do anymore, just because of excessive serialization.
I do think there's a lot of value in like, you know, just the kind of the older style of like heroes being heroes and like interacting with their public in that way. But I also do think there's something in like the Dark Knight approach where you're like genuinely like questioning the superheroes like place in society. So that's just my take on it. But you know,
I struggle to think like whether we're ever going to get that just by the nature of these things and how like they in themselves they become like these paragons of morality, and like the idea of saying like Superman, you're actually doing everything wrong, you're fucking up a perfectly good like police work system here in Metropolis.
Oddly, like the Lego Batman movie is the movie that's gotten closest to that.
It's close. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but I also think like I don't watch superhero movies to get that. But granted, like I do agree that like going full hog, like the Nolan movies almost did, is really interesting. Like, I'll give you that.
Well, I'm working on something about that, but we'll talk more about that off mic.
We'll see about this.
Okay. Anyway,
speaking of Christopher Nolan.
Oh boy, so, that was a segue. That was a segue.
Yes. So, can I say something?
Yes.
I guess this movie is predictable. So not only do we know that, you know...
Well, hold on. We don't even know what movie we're talking about yet.
Okay, Dunkirk.
Yes.
There. It needs no introduction.
Oh, you mean Dunkirk.
Yes, we all saw Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk today. So, yeah. Let's talk a little bit... The hot new release of the week. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that, shall we?
Okay. So, I guess... First thing I have to say, this movie's predictable, and it's predictable in not only like you know what's going to happen in the end, but also in the score. There's a point I think about halfway through where there's a ticking noise in the score, accompanied by an ever so increasing accelerando, and I believe this is with the hospital boat, and everyone's getting food, and then like it's. You know, it's sinking, like, and then, like, explosion.
Ejaculation.
Can I ask, Did you like the score? Because
I hated it.
a lot of people have been saying this score is really good, and I think I'm over like these Hans Zimmer scores where it like sounds like he fell asleep on his instruments. Like,
Oh, yeah, I hate it. I hate it. I think it's like it drowns out everything else in the sound.
okay,
design.
we'll talk about that in a minute. But
Okay.
yeah, I was not a fan of the score in this
Oh, yeah,
movie
I
either.
know. Like whenever he would just get on the like me and Reed would just start like doing fake drums in the theater.
Oh, I was
and
conducting.
I thought it was distracting as shit.
Okay. All right. So okay. So this is Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. I will say this. I liked this movie. I think it's good. I think it might be honestly his best movie other than The Dark Knight, which I realize like for me isn't saying a lot anymore.
Well, okay. Like, why do you like it?
I kind of like this too.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about like why do you like it? What
Okay.
What do you think are the merits?
I think like this movie does oddly like play to his strengths in a lot of ways. Like Christopher Nolan like does not write very good dialogue. This movie doesn't have that much dialogue. That's
Yes.
good. Love that. Like he's very good at like conveying a sense of scale. He's good at like large scale, just kind of big stories, which this movie is. And I think that aspect of it comes across pretty well.
He's good at like establishing things like within action beats, so
Yeah.
like, you always have like a good sense of like where we are and what we're doing.
This movie like was not like his usual kind of like puzzle box kind of thing, so that was a nice like change of pace for him. I feel like this movie was him kind of like somewhat like reassessing like what a Christopher Nolan movie is, and I liked that. I will say this movie though also has like some of his like signature problems, which is that what dialogue there is, some of it is very like on the nose and like kind of that.
Oh yeah.
Oh god, and that moment.
Kind of joke dialogue you'd put into a historical
Yeah.
thriller.
that moment, also that moment where like the ships all or the boats all arrive at the beach, and like when like Kenneth Branagh like sees all them and like the music swells, and I'm like that's horrible, that's terrible.
Fuck me.
And like I will also say like a lot of my problems with this movie are like technical. The sound mix in this movie is awful. Like I
You cannot understand a single word out of anyone's
and
mouth.
I don't know, like, I mean, the accents were already, I was, like, kind of having a little bit of trouble just, like, deciphering the accents, but then the dialogue is also just buried by effects and by score and by, it's one of the worst sound mixes I've ever seen in a
This
movie.
is the second straight Christopher Nolan movie where you just cannot understand what people are saying by, like just poor sound design.
Yeah.
And I think that's just shocking.
And also, like,
a movie as expensive as this.
I don't know, also, I don't know if it was just, like, the theater I was in, but, like, this movie was loud as shit. Like, it was so loud. I was like, what the shit? Like, Jesus Christ, dial it back just a little. Like,
oh yeah. As far as I don't.
anytime there was, like, a gunshot in this movie, like, I would, like, jump 3 feet in the air. Like, it was insane.
Oh, and just like in Interstellar.
Yeah.
My general thoughts on it are, why does it exist? Is this a movie?
I think
Are there
so.
characters?
Well, okay, I will say,
Is there what?
they're not really characters. That is true. Like all these people are just kind of like people. Like just like you're like, who are they? Like I don't know if it even matters.
British, German,
Well,
French.
I will say I don't know that it really matters because like it's a story about like survival, and it's just the main purpose of it is just like suspense and tension, and like I'm okay with that up to a point. Like the first like half hour of Saving Private Ryan like is interesting because it's like this huge battle sequence that like you're kind of like just thrown into it, and like you don't really know any of these characters yet, and like yet that battle sequence is great, like one of the best like in cinema history, like and yet like you're not like super like invested in the characters just because you haven't met them yet, but it's still like a viscerally like thrilling sequence to watch. Now let me follow that up because I know what you're about to say. Yes, that is like one battle sequence in a long movie that has much more other stuff like after it and other stuff going on. True. Yes. A big issue I had with Dunkirk was that like after a while it just started to get like numbing. Like this movie was like just an exercise in sustained suspense for an hour and 45 minutes, and like
it is after an hour and 43 minutes of climax.
Yeah, and that does get like this movie definitely like sags in the middle, and it at an hour and 40-minute long movie really should not sag in the middle.
Oh yeah, well, I'd have to say, like, guess what? Like, what would happen to the Saving Private Ryan scene if we extended it to an hour and 43 minutes? I'd end up hating it.
Right? Yeah. So that's a bit of a problem.
And like, as far as like its ideas. What I did, like, I don't even get this. I don't even really. I mean, like, there's like vague survival skills out of it.
Was Nolan trying to be like a poet laureate in the beginning with the text in the beginning?
They are waiting to be saved. They are waiting for a miracle. Day one. Fuck you, Nolan.
Wow. Okay. Listen, I didn't hate this movie. I think there are parts of it that work very well. Also one thing. So the big thing with this movie is that like he plays with time in an interesting way. Like he has like three separate threads where it's like one is like on the ground and it takes place over a week. One is like on the sea and it takes place over a day, and then the one in the air takes place over an hour.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, for some reason, he decides to intercut those threads instead of just having them separate, which makes it so confusing because you don't know when anything is supposed to be happening.
Like, it is like stitching completely different movies in between each other, and you just go like, okay, now we're in this movie.
Like if you wanted to do like the Pulp Fiction thing and like tell it out of order, but like have it like be separate, like that would be fine.
Need characters for that.
But, like, having it all intercut and, like, this, I don't know. I don't know why he did it that way. And it's very, like most Nolan things, it's an interesting idea, but doesn't quite work in practice.
It reminds me of The Prestige a little bit.
Yeah.
And also, I think, like, some of the technical stuff in the movie is, like, really impressive. Like, you can always tell, like, we're in real planes.
Yeah.
That's a real sea. That's a real ship.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes pretty arresting visuals, but to quote Darren Franich, if you shoot real things boringly, they're going to be boring.
I do think the visuals in this were like a little bit more. They were, I think, some of the better.
Pretty damn impressive stuff.
Yeah, they are definitely like some of the better, maybe the best visuals we've seen from him. Like he does some interesting stuff in here.
Oh yeah, I know. I guess like at the end of the day, I was just like super bored at the movie. I was just. Everything from, like, there are no characters.
There are no characters.
And I think that's my biggest issue is that, like, I can't, I mean, how am I supposed to watch, like, an hour and 43 minutes of action without, like, a single, like, character I can latch onto? Because, like, as much as we want to say it's, like, oh, it's, like, this experience, like, we care about World War II. We care about history because it happened to people. It's the people that matters. I don't fucking care about your perfect goddamn Spitfires. I don't give a fuck about your perfect Stuka sounds. I don't care about, like, World War II because God isn't the equipment just so fucking cool, and God isn't action so cool, and look at all those British people helping other British people. It's about, like, these, like, inner human stories, and that's what Spielberg did with, like, Saving Private Ryan and Schindler's List, like, just boiling these things down to, like, a really human level.
Yeah.
And that's what all the best war movies do. That's what Powell and Pressburger do. It's, like, just boiling down, like, huge historical epics to a really human level. And I don't know what Nolan was thinking. Just removing that all together and just having, like, a big, like, almost experimental action scene.
I don't know. I'm kind of into that. I like that Christopher Nolan is like using his clout as a director who can like get a studio to fund anything he wants to do to like shoot a big scale like historical epic in 70 millimeter with practical effects and experimenting with storytelling form. Like I like that. It's just a shame that like he's not better at it.
Yeah, I just during it, I'm just thinking like, man, I just fucking wish another director could just have like the blank check ability of a Nolan.
Yeah.
And just be, I mean, fucking imagine if like Terry Gilliam or like some other like small great director
like Wes Anderson,
or Wes Anderson already.
Wes Anderson could basically do whatever he wants, but
but like yeah, I was so bored.
No.
I don't know what the point of this movie is. I don't know why they made it. I don't know why Nolan even wanted to make it, other than like, hey, practical effects are cool, guys, and I can shoot it on film. And like technicals aside, like I don't see movies like for the thrill of seeing things crash into other things and seeing like. I guess it's just like a disagreement. Like this is like all the reasons I don't go to see movies, just in one.
yeah.
And also like this movie, like more than any other, I think I've seen just completely decontextualizes World War II and just makes it a blunt object.
That is true.
Yes.
So yeah, like, I don't hate it. I see there are merits to it. I'm just staggered that this exists and they made it and they backed it and it just wasn't left as like some intriguing idea on the cutting room floor. So yeah, I don't like it.
I found this movie to be a documentary without a narrator, and it should have had a narrator.
Yeah, imagine the movie with narration.
Maybe it would have been better.
Because
Michael
Nolan
Caine
uses
is a narrator.
Because Nolan uses Michael Caine in everything.
I'm kind of picturing like, I mean, maybe not like throughout the entire movie, but like those bits at the beginning of Doctor Strangelove where like they narrate like just to like introduce each like kind of thread of it. Yeah. That might have been interesting.
Probably the one part of this movie I call bullshit on. It's pretty realistic, except for one part. It's when a recovered RAF pilot from the boat of the old man and children, I guess, pushes one of the children down the deck, and he hits his head, and then he later dies.
Yeah, but
fuck that.
I don't know what they were doing.
I don't buy that.
I just genuinely don't know.
I don't buy that. No.
I genuinely don't know like what they were doing at that scene. Like there's some scenes in this movie that have like the classic like Nolan gray area, like sort of morality tale ability in there, but like there's a certain point where he just fucking drops it. Like the like kid dying goes nowhere other than like some patriotic wanking thing where he ends up in a newspaper. Like them in the boat, like
oh yeah. I really didn't buy that whole thing either, where Cillian Murphy just like shoves the kid down. Yeah, I don't know what was up with that.
I also just don't like Cillian Murphy.
He's not good in this movie. I've liked him in other things, but like he's not very good in this movie.
Wait, so who are the actors? Because I know that there were like actors in this movie, but where were they? Where?
Who was Harry Styles? I'm gonna ask this.
Yes,
I think he was that like asshole like soldier who like thought like the French guy was German and like wanted to like kick him off the boat or something. I think that was him. I don't know.
That makes sense because that guy was terrible.
I spent most of the movie thinking that the lead guy was Harry Styles, and it wasn't.
There's
so
no lead guy. There is no character. There is no.
No. I mean, like the main like British soldier guy like in the beach segment. I thought I literally thought that guy was Harry Styles for like the entire marketing campaign and most of the movie. And
I will say this: Mark Rylance is almost a character. By pure strength of will, he almost makes a believable character.
Yeah. Also, Tom Hardy cannot get into a movie where, like, he says lines without shit on his face to save his life.
I couldn't even tell that was Tom Hardy until, removed his, like, helmet at the end.
Wait, Tom Hardy's in this movie?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know that until the very end when he takes off his helmet. I was like, shit, that's Tom Hardy.
Well,
Tom Hardy was in this
movie. I thought they just hired a bunch of wankers for this movie as people.
Okay, that's a you problem, because I definitely knew that was Tom Hardy. But okay, so Dunkirk, in what I'm finding to be a recurring thread this summer, it's pretty good. It's fine, but like, you know,
It's not fine at the same
that's
time.
about it.
I mean, I think it should have been aborted. I don't
Jeez.
think this movie should have been made.
Jeez.
I think, like, you
Hey.
should have just, like, I think you just really need to go back to the cutting room floor.
This movie is miles better than Interstellar. I will say that.
I don't know whether I'd rather see Interstellar again.
This movie is short. So,
Yes, I will say this. When it got to the end, I'm like, oh, that's why I want to see the movie. It's short.
yeah.
That's why I wanted to see this movie, because it was short.
Yeah, like, I just think it's like, I think it's just like an experiment gone wrong that you just needed to really look at it a bit more before you poured money into it.
all right. Well, that's
They
Dunkirk.
did them more with, like, Air Force, because the dogfights were somewhat interesting.
Those are pretty cool. Those are
I
pretty
mean,
cool.
real planes shooting at. There's like a real. I mean, like, it's all real stuff, and that's pretty cool sometimes. And like this, that's neat. Like, I like how we're like in actual ocean and not CGI land. But why should I care?
Okay.
Why should I care?
All right. Let's get off of this. Just
So is that it?
That's Dunkirk. All right. So I have been watching some of the. We are already cruising up on an hour. So do we want to just keep talking? Because
Let's
they're.
keep going, man. We can count what we need to.
All right. So I have some. Have you guys been watching anything else? Before I run down my list.
Game of Thrones.
Oh, I forgot. Yes.
No, I can't quite say, like, I can't quite give, like, a good opinion on it, because, like, as the nature of, like, these screening parties, it's actually really hard to pay attention to what you're watching, because of, like, all the other stuff going on. Like, there was, like, a game of Monopoly we were doing as we were watching, so, but, it's so boring. It is. I really don't get it, because, like, the fantasy world they build is just so generic. Like all the designs are just like really bland and low key.
All right, let me say this. You came in on the 7th season premiere of this show without ever having seen an episode before, right? Yeah. Now it's a little hard to come into a show, especially one like this, which is so dense with like so many like different threads and like running strands and like different things going on. I think you have made and probably will make, because I kind of cut you off, some valid points.
Yeah.
But I just want to say this. I mean, I'm no huge fan of Game of Thrones either. Like, I stopped watching after the 5th season because I was just kind of out on it. Yeah. But I do think the world building that they do is pretty interesting, and I kind of like the idea of, like, a fantasy world where it's, like, basically, like, a medieval society with, like, politics and money and, like, governmental concerns. I kind of like that. And also, like, this, from what I've seen, this episode definitely feels like one of many episodes of the show, like, where, like, just nothing happens.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, the nothing happens bit is something I wasn't going to even bring up, because it's just, like, a self-contained little thing I watched.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, my issue with that is that, like, how they present all of this is, like, dead-eyed people with no blood in their veins coldly talking about the ideas that are befalling their world.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I don't know if this is a George R.R. Martin thing, because, like, apparently he, like, took inspiration from history and so forth, and, like, that's and medieval history especially. And, like,
Warner wouldn't know. I think Warner would know, because he reads the book.
He has read the books.
Okay, but, like, like, George R.R. Martin, like, history can be, like, really gripping and funny and colorful and, like, just really absurd sometimes.
Again, at times the show is. Like, there are moments like that in the episodes that I've seen, but there are also just a lot of episodes which are just like this, with, like, people kind of standing and sitting around, just kind of talking about the fate of this fictional country that we're seeing.
Yeah. I mean, like, and that can be interesting, believe me, but, like, it's got, everything's gray, everyone looks bored, just from, like, this episode, I'm just kind of baffled that, like, this is, like, must-watch television for a lot of people. Like,
yeah.
I see the merits of it. I can sort of see, like, but I think it also, like, at one point, I just think the world is, like, there's, like, a thing of, like, wow, we built all this stuff. And, like, wow, this is all stuff they built somewhere in America. Like,
Well, they used to.
I thought this was in, like, Wales or some shit.
where did they build this shit? All the sets and...
Oh, I don't. I think in somewhere in Europe. I think they shot parts of it in Spain. They've shot. I think they shoot most of it in England somewhere.
Okay.
I don't know. They did used to like really dress up like those kinds of things. Like I think you've probably heard the term like sex position, which was like this thing the show did in the first couple seasons where like they would just do like, you know, kind of boring exposition, like, but like with boobs, so like to get you to pay attention, which is problematic for a lot of reasons. So I understand why they've stopped doing that.
I mean, if you have to flash tits in my face to do something, you failed on that thing. I think that's just something I can say.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
yeah, I'm just sort of like baffled that this is something that like that has been like even like the dragons look bored and there's
it's strange.
Even the dragons look bored.
I'm breaking fire today. I broke fire yesterday.
Man, I just see no from this thing and from what everything else I've seen from it, I just think like, why should anyone watch this? Like, it's boringly shot, it's boringly acted, it's boringly presented. I just don't get it. Like and not just this episode. I've seen snippets of a lot of other pieces of the show, and I just go, I'm bored. Let's go. I want to do something else.
Yeah.
I suppose all there is winter is coming. That's it. Do something.
My big issues with the show is that like I've never like been able to like get a sense of like what they're building towards. Like I just feel like this narrative has been like so dragged out and like just like expanded and all to hell and is just needlessly complicated, and like I'm shocked it hasn't collapsed under its own weight already.
Yeah.
And all that combined with like the parts that are interesting are always just so bleak and so punishing that it after a certain point I was just like, this really isn't like fun to watch anymore.
Yeah, I guess maybe people are just idiots. But
it's
also
very pulpy. It is for all its aspirations to like prestige television, it is extremely pulpy.
Yeah, but like, I don't think that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, that is not I fully intend that as a pejorative. Like I truly do not understand like what the point of the show is.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe this is also like a personal issue I'm finding with myself, and I think maybe this is just like rooted from my ADHD. But like, I just can't get into serialization that much. Like all the television that I love is all like super episodic and and all the episodes are self-contained. And I think that's just something that's a flaw of mine.
Well,
that's
just a matter of personal preference. I certainly I agree with you. Well, I don't agree with you on like the serialization thing, but I agree with you. That's more of like a personal thing.
And I think that's something a lot of people are sort of coming to, is that like more episodic. Well, actually, I don't know what people really think, because like all like the really huge things right now are like these huge serialized epics.
Well, I do think serialization is like starting to wane. Like it's been like such a like thing in the zeitgeist for such a long time now that I think it's starting to wane like a little bit. But there is still, I don't know. Well, this actually kind of transitions into something I've been watching. I can kind of continue this topic because I've been continuing my journey through HBO's The Wire, which is maybe the most serialized show ever made. Because this show, like, I realized like about halfway through the third season that like the true like unit of The Wire is the season. Like it is much more concerned with like the self-contained like story being one season of the show rather than an episode. Like every episode of The Wire, it's interesting because like after a certain point, like every episode of The Wire except for the season finales is like exactly 58 minutes long. Okay, not exactly 58 minutes long, but like they're all like right around 58 minutes long. So like I kind of think that, like, what happened was, like, they were like, okay, we'll, like, advance, like, all the story threads, like, as much as we can, like, in 58 minutes, and then that'll just be the episode, and then we'll catch up we'll just any last holes we need to fill in, we'll do that like on down the line.
So like treating it as like an extended movie.
Basically, yeah. Like every season of The Wire is basically like a really like a 10 to 13 hour movie. And like it's really good. Like this show is better than like any show I've ever seen at like balancing so many like really fleshed out characters and so many threads and also just like one of the best portrayals of like a city and like a culture and like an environment that I've ever seen in anything. And that's really interesting. It is like the culmination of, I think, the serialized like form of television. It is a true masterpiece of that. I'm like a few episodes into the 4th season right now, and it's just incredible. They just have so many threads going that I'm amazed that they're like able to balance them all, and yet somehow they do. It's an incredible series, and I think you would probably get bored with it very quickly just because of how like drawn out and serialized it is.
Well, this sounds like it's like serialization, but with like a defined endpoint.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something I think I can get on board with far more than like, hey, we're gonna serialize this into like season fucking 8 and still not give you any answers.
Yeah, that can get very, very cumbersome. All right.
So on to Friends, I guess.
Well, no, I'm just gonna speed through the rest of these, and then I'll quickly talk about Friends. I watched, at the recommendation of a professor I know, I watched a movie called Tender Mercies, starring Robert Duvall. I think it was made in 1983. It was written by Horton Foote, who wrote the screenplay for To Kill a Mockingbird. This is it's a strange movie, and not just like because it's like really weird, like in the sense that we usually mean, but like it's like it is so low key that like it's incredible. Like the movie starts with like Robert Duvall like in a motel, like he plays this like old like kind of washed up like alcoholic country singer, and he like wakes up in this motel and he like he's not able to get into town and he like doesn't have any money, so he's like he goes to the owner of the motel, who's like this woman like with a son whose husband died in Vietnam. And he goes to her and he's like, "Hey, can I work here?" And she's like, "Sure, but you can't drink while you're working here." And he's like, "Okay." And then he just quits drinking. Like that's that is this movie's depiction of its main alcoholic character.
Interesting. Okay.
And this movie's not bad, but like it's kind of like, you need conflict to make compelling drama. It's like this movie is so low key and so like not like it never like ramps up the conflict hardly at all. Like later in the movie, like his daughter dies in a car accident, and then like they don't really like do anything. Like nothing. I don't know. It's a very strange movie, and like it's good and it's well made, and Robert Duvall is very good in it. But like it is one of the like most committed movies to like having nothing exciting happen that I think I've ever seen.
Well, like we sing the praises of the small movie quite often on this podcast, but oftentimes like when we speak to that, it's about like the like mechanics of like a normal giant epic, but just like pumped down to like, hey, like a man's daughter might not make it to prom or something like that. Where it's like the same, there's still conflict, there are still like emotions and things like that, but it's just all put at a smaller level. And like we sing those praises, but you know, there's a reason sometimes your home movies aren't very good.
Yeah.
So, I haven't seen this movie.
It's weird. It's like it plays like Paris, Texas, like mashed up with Nashville, but like so much like lower key than either of those movies.
Well, both of those movies have like these really like intense core conflicts.
Yeah, and like those movies both have like points of crisis that they boil to, and then like they just escalate, and this movie just doesn't have that at all.
Nashville ends with a shooting.
Yeah, so that's very strange. So that's Tender Mercies. I finally have embarked on the journey that is the Bourne movies. I watched The Bourne Identity. Good movie. Good, solid action movie. Kind of workman. Kind of like, you know, by the numbers a little bit, but it's good. Matt Damon's very good. The action sequences are very cool. It's got an interesting idea at its core. apparently the second one is where the series like really kicks into high gear, so I'm very excited to see that. I haven't watched it yet.
So it's kind of just like the selling point of it is that like, hey, shaky cam spy thriller.
Well, honestly, the first one like doesn't even really have the shaky cam thing yet, but I mean, it's not just that. Like, it's got an interesting like central conceit where he just like wakes up like in the floating in the middle of the ocean, like having no idea who he is, and he like has to try and figure out like who he is and like what he does and like why all this happened to him, and that's pretty interesting.
It kind of sounds like a film noir plot.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. It's fun. It's a good movie.
That's interesting.
So, I've also kind of found myself needing like some comfort viewing lately. One thing I
watched Superman Returns.
Yeah. Before I get to Friends, which has been my main source of that, just going back and watching random episodes of Friends. Yesterday I rewatched Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is kind of my go-to comfort movie.
Yes.
Have you seen that movie, John?
Nope.
Okay. I know. I know you are not much for high school movies, but like I think you might actually kind of like this one because there's some very like kind of fun and interesting like eccentric filmmaking in it, and like it's just a really like just fun movie, and it
seems more like a send up of the high school movie more than like an actual high school movie itself.
Honestly, it does like almost play that way. It I think you might kind of like it. I hope.
It is a day off after all.
Yeah, you're right.
And like the main like kind of thread with like his best friend and like him kind of like reassessing his life is very interesting and resonant. So I love that. I love it. I think it's a great movie. And then
I will watch it.
And then, as I say, I've been rewatching a lot of like random episodes of Friends, and I wanted to just talk about this quickly because I've noticed that Friends has a very interesting approach to like its storytelling. Because starting in like the second season, what the show would do would have like these very like loose like running like story threads that would like go from episode to episode, and there are episodes that like would like deal more with like those threads, and those threads would be like a bigger thing, and then there's some episodes where like they'll have like those threads and they'll like advance them a little bit, and then they'll also have like just this like bizarre like almost formless like B plot, or like this B plot that just like comes like totally out of left field. It's like, what? Like this was an episode? Like and it's kind of fun. Like some of the episodes are just like these weird like formless like things that are just like just characters you like just like cracking wise and like living their lives, and that's very fun to like.
So kind of like Seinfeld?
Well, yes, very much so. I was about to say that. Like Seinfeld kind of gets a lot of credit and kind of invented the idea of like the show about nothing.
Yeah.
Like Friends took like the most basic premise in the world of like just like 6 young people just like hanging out, like living their lives in New York City.
In Fantasy Manhattan,
yes. And their commitment just like to like Friends is also like really just like a show that's like not really about anything. It's just like, but like Seinfeld like took that idea and made it like an absurdist, like borderline surreal, like very like strange like series of like
they tried to make the sitcom cartoon.
Yeah, they kind of did, and they succeeded. I mean, Seinfeld is great,
but
like
you have the Soup Nazi episode.
Yeah,
but I think one of my favorite episodes, like there's a world building exercise centered around eating a Snickers bar with a knife and fork.
Yeah. Seinfeld just like hyperbolized everything and like made it just like this very strange, like absurdist masterpiece.
Yeah.
Friends is very sincere and very sentimental, but
is it still like absurd? But like
sometimes, yeah. And it's just oddly compelling as just like a show, like just a very like charming like show about these people that you like. That is just kind of like good and fun to watch. Like, so that makes it that's part of what makes it like such good comfort viewing. And I like it. It's so that's just kind of, I found its approach to storytelling rather interesting upon this watch.
Questions of serialization abound in all our minds as we get into this What fucking phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe are we in now?
Who cares? Who gives a shit? I don't care anymore. So that's what we've been watching. Somehow we managed to get this like an hour and 20 minutes long.
Hey man, Dunkirk was interesting.
Yeah. So guys, if you ever wanted to just hear us shoot the shit about movies for a while, this is the podcast for you. We didn't want you to go without the sweet Hack Fraud Show content for a week, so we
I didn't want to go another week without explaining my crisis about Spider-Man: Homecoming.
yeah, and we just like talking to each other about movies and about what we've been up to and what we've been watching. So
this is what we do in our free time.
yes, we invite you to share that experience with us, and that's really what this podcast is all about. So this may be in some essence like the purest distillation of our experience with this podcast. So thank you all for joining us. So next week we will have Memories of Murder and Spring, Summer, Fall, Winter, and Spring to talk about. I promise you that, barring any just super crises, we will have that episode for you next week.
Of course.
Thank you all for joining us, and Godspeed.
Godspeed.
Wait, he was in this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the asshat who pushed the kid down the stairs.
Oh.
Next week we will have the Superman cartoons forever.